crafty friends, Kim from Stamping Imperfection. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Do you have a bag of scraps that looks something like this? Actually, this is a pretty neat version. 2 days ago, this thing was bulging full, and I have to say, I decided to pull out a bunch of them and just start stamping on them. I had a stamp set I had not played with yet, and some ink colors I really wanted to use more because I hadn't really stamped much with them at all. So I spent an afternoon doing what felt like random stamping, and I ended up with a stack of 10 cards that I absolutely love. I created matching envelopes for them, and I'm super excited to share these with you and to share the process of making them with you, because I ended up really loving this. And in the process, I decided that I did a good job using up my scraps. I have 2 pieces of black cardstock scraps here. I have some very vanilla that I didn't pull out at all, but I really whittled my white down a lot, and I pulled out all the pieces that I know I can't make panels on. These are really perfect for sentiments, and that's why I'm saving them. So this I'll set aside so I pull it out and use it for my sentiments, and hopefully not add too much more to it till I use these up. But you have all these extra bits when you're trimming things down. Pull them out. I have 2 pieces, my best crafting advice I can give you, 2 pieces of advice. The first one is experiment with your stuff. Like, spend some time in your craft room pulling out these scrap bits and stamping on them with stamp sets you've never used, or stamp sets you'd like to use in a different way, or techniques you'd like to try. I do have lots of techniques on my YouTube channel, so feel free to browse through and find maybe a technique you haven't done in a while, or a technique you haven't even tried at all. But you can whittle your scrap bag down a lot, just like I did in one afternoon, and I'm pretty happy with this. So I've got another afternoon of crafting there. But here's what I used. I pulled out a whole bunch of those scraps, and they were all different sizes and all different shapes. Some were long strips, some were squares, some were little squares, some were long rectangles. Like, I really had a good time just stamping. So this is a Textured Floral stamp set. I just got this a couple of days ago, and it was not what I expected. Because when I looked at it online, I thought the image looked like it was going to be one of those stamps that gave you the watercolored look. But it turns out it doesn't give you a watercolored look so much as it gives you a distressed look. Like, you can see how these stamped, they're not stamped perfectly. They were inked perfectly. However, the stamps have a little bit of texture to them. So it gives you this almost distressed vintagey feel, and I really like it. So while I was disappointed that it wasn't a watercolor look, I actually ended up really loving the look that I did get. And I did some stamping off. When I first made this panel, I hated it. When I came back an hour later, I added some of this little splatter stamp in Mossy Meadow, and I added some white gel pen details, and I used my Stampin' Write marker to add some very thin stems, and I loved the way it looked when it was done. And I used up all of my black cardstock except for 2 small pieces, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I had a great time, and you can see I ended up with 11 cards. I used every stamp in that stamp set twice, and I ended up really loving them. This was my least favorite one. I thought this was a stinker, and then when I put it on a card and added a sentiment, it just really ended up liking it. Here you can see this, and I was surprised by how much the colors lightened, because when I first stamped them, the colors were really dark, and I know ink lightens as it dries, but I was surprised by how much these lightened. And you can see I have quite a variety of cards. You can really see that distress look. Some super simple, but I had some small squares. I saved them. I decided to experiment and use them. I made a variety of matching envelopes here, and I'm super excited about this project because I really ended up with 11 cards I really like, and I want to share that process with you because I just sat down with those scrap pieces in front of me and started stamping. The stamp wasn't what I expected at first, but as I went on, I just kind of started doing my own thing. I was trying to like mask and be like this one. I actually masked the leaves, and I wasn't even sure this was a leaf stamp. I thought it might be, is it petals of a flower that's like half the flower showing, because sometimes you get that. I wasn't really sure about the centers, and you can see I wasn't sure where to even put the centers, but it's okay because it's a distressed look, and in the end I'm really happy with how these turned out, and nobody's gonna know except for you that I wasn't quite sure about this stamp set. Like this splatter stamp actually turned vertically, looks like it could be a flower in it of itself, and that's why I added it to a few of my cards. Like this, where is the, like I have a favorite. I definitely have a favorite, and I had some that I really didn't love, but putting them aside for an hour and walking away made a huge difference. And I didn't love this, but I added those splatters and the stems and the dots. This one, when I was making it, this was the last card that I made, and I just inked up the tip of that splatter stamp and added it around, and I loved it. I absolutely loved that immediately. That's why I added it to a few other cards afterwards. So experiment with your stuff. Get those scraps out, use them up. If you make panels you hate, use them in your traveler's notebook or your art journal. If you accidentally make a bunch of panels that you love in the end, like I did, you're going to get a set of beautiful cards. And it also gave me the opportunity to use every stamp in this stamp set multiple times, which I'm excited about because I just got this a couple days ago, and I'm trying really hard to be very intentional in the purchases that I'm making with my Stampin' Up supplies. I don't want to buy supplies that just sit on my shelf, so I'm being very careful when I order a stamp set or a die set that it's something that I will use. So I'm trying to use it within a couple of days of receiving it. I'm trying to use what I'm receiving right away, and I'm really excited about this. So I will definitely be pulling this out to use some more. I'd love to try some other color combinations. I'm thinking maybe some fall combinations would be super fun, or maybe some of those light pastel ones for springier cards. But the sentiments in this are beautiful, and I'd like to share how I went through the process of putting these together. Now, part of the video I'll speed up a little bit and voice over, because I'm not gonna lie, as I was stamping, I did get to a point where I wasn't sure I was loving them, and I was mostly talking to myself about what I wanted to do next, what I liked, what I didn't like, or ooh, that card's a stinker. But then I put them aside, laid them all out, went and had dinner, spent a little time chit-chatting with my husband, came back and realized, ooh, these dried, I like them so much better. I actually then left them overnight and did all the cards the next day, and I'm in love. So try that. So here we are with how I went through the process. I'm doing a total experiment here. I have this bag of scrap paper. This is my white and black scrap paper bag, and I have been working my way through it. So I pulled out some scraps of different sizes, and I thought I'll just stamp on these different things and see what kinds of cards I can make out of them. So, you know, they're just quite a variety of shapes and sizes here. So I'm just going to play with them and have a little bit of fun. So in doing so, I thought I would come up with a color scheme. So I have not played too much with the in colors, and I thought I would pull out last year's in colors because these are new ink pads to me, and I really like this color combination. I think the copper clay and pebbled path that come with it are also very beautiful. So I thought I would do the Moody Mauve, Wild Wheat, and Boho Blue. I'll stamp a few things to see how I like it. And for my green, I'm going to use Mossy Meadow. It feels like it's in the same like tone family. They feel like grayer colors to me, and I really like them. With this one, actually, let me grab some of my clear blocks here, and I'm just going to put all the things out here on clear blocks. So I'm almost ready here, and it's got a great little splatter type stamp, and I will save the I'll save the sentiments for when I get to that part, once I get the things put together. So this video could be a little longer than normal because I have a lot of scraps here that I would really like to use up. And you know, I try to reach for the scraps first, but it doesn't always work that way. So I have two squares here, and I think I would really like one of these big flowers in the middle of that square. So let me open this up, and I like to just condition it by running it across my arm. I always have better luck with that. And let me see if I feel like I need to pull out the what do you call it? The foam pad, the Stampin' Pierce. Okay, and it isn't supposed to be a perfect image, I don't think. So we shall see. Now to my right here, or to my left I mean, I have my Stampin' Chamois, which I just ran underwater so it's nice and moist, and loving the Stampin' Chamois. There we go. It's not as watercolory as I expected it to be. Might be a little disappointed in that. And this is actually a much darker color than I expected also. So I'm going to stamp these two squares. So this is actually a little different than I expected it to be. And as a result, I'm going to add one thing. I'm going to do some masking. And I really like masking techniques. So I've got this stamping mask paper, which I use a lot. And this is actually only the second package of this I've ever purchased. The first package lasted me years. I used it quite a bit, but I was very frugal with it. So I will be the same way with this one. So to use masking paper, now if you don't have masking paper, a post-it note will work just fine. But you want the post-it note to at least cover the size of your image. So I'm going to stamp this on here, and I'm not going to re-ink again. I'm just going to stamp again because I basically just need to be able to see that shape. So I'm just going to give this a little wipe because it had something on it there. And while I'm doing the fussy cutting, I'm just going to close this up. I don't like to leave my ink pads open. I'm very careful with them. So I'm just going to cut around here and just cut around this image. And if the masks are still in good shape when I'm done, I will actually store them in my stamp case so that they can actually be reused. So I'm just going to cut these off. I don't like to have a whole piece of paper. wagging around when I'm doing this. So this, of course, goes right back in here. Little pieces can be used like you wouldn't believe, so I'm very frugal with that masking paper. Okay, so I'm just going to fussy cut these out, and I'm doing 2 because there will definitely be places where I know I want to stamp 2 of these together, and I really like overlapping things and, you know, creating a realistic looking bunch of flowers. So we'll just fussy cut these out. Now I'm using my paper snips from Stampin' Up, and I love these paper snips. These are actually my favorite scissors to fussy cut with. I also have a pair of Cutter Bee ones that I actually really like as well. I've tried a bunch of them, and there are some that I don't like. I didn't like the close to my heart ones. The shape of the finger holes was very different, and it turns out I'm very fussy about the shape of the finger holes. So you have to find a pair of scissors that you love to do stuff like this. Okay, and let's go around this. Now when you fussy cut, like, I don't have to be perfect on this because it's just a mask. It's going to cover the image that I just stamped so that I can stamp another image over the top of it without getting the ink from the other image over the top of it. And then it'll look like the stamp that I stamped over the top will actually look like it's behind the floral image. So I'm going to stamp those leaves over the top of this, and really I want them to look like they're behind the image. So I'm going to just peel this backing off now. This is always the tricky part. Sometimes I have to get a paper piercer out to help me do that. And then I'm just going to stick it over the top, and you'll notice it's definitely not perfect. That's okay, it will be good enough. And I'm going to also pull out a piece of paper. I love working on my glass mat, and I don't mind making a mess on it, but I have a whole bunch of things I want to stamp, and I feel like it'll get a little tedious if I'm like stamping and then wiping off my glass board. So I'm going to just put the paper behind it to soak up some of the ink, because I'll definitely be over stamping on these smaller images. Okay, so I'll put this one over the top of this. There we go. Now I want to stamp some leaves on, and I've got the Mossy Meadow ink, which is a lovely green. This pad looks like it's coming up here. I'll have to play with it later. And I've got a little ink on my, oh, I forgot to rub this on my arm. I think I actually want to stamp this first. I got ink on my clear block is what I was trying to say, so I always want to get that off there. There, let's see if that's better. That's better. Alright, so let me bring this back in, and I'm just going to position this something like this. Once I have the ink on them, I can definitely tell that they're the leaves. Oh, that looks pretty. I really like that. Alright, I'm going to put that aside. I'm good with that. I'm going to put that over here. And I'm going to do the same thing here, except this time I think I will try to position it slightly differently. And I think this is supposed to look really vintage almost. Like a little raggedy. It's not supposed to stamp perfectly, and I like the look of that. I like watercolor look stamps, and I like raggedy looking stamps, so I like that. Nice. So before I put these away though, I do want to stamp the inner bits, and I'm thinking this larger one has to go with the largest flower. So I want to do this in the yellow. So I'm going to pull out the wild wheat. When I set my stamps up, I took one of those extra stickers and put it here. So now I know which stamp set is, or which ink pad is which. I really like that feature. That was a smart addition. And I'm thinking this will go here. There we go. Now it's not super yellowy, but I kind of like, it's got a lot of brown in it, and I actually quite like that about that. So I'm going to put these two aside. I'll pull those out when I get everything else stamped, and we can make our cards up. So I've got one thing this size, so I thought I would do some stamping on this. And again, I want to use the large flower, but I think let's try it in blue this time. And see how this looks. Now, how big is this? This is 5. So this is like a 3 by 5 piece. Oops, that's not the biggest one. So I'm going to stamp this over here on the side. That's a pretty blue, isn't it? Ooh, very pretty. And I think I'll stamp this one up here. I actually expected more of the texture that I see to show up in the stamp. And I'm kind of surprised that's not happening, but I really like the effect. Now, I did not purchase the dies for this. Alright, so I'm going to add the centers. I'm just randomly stamping these here. I don't know where they really go, but I don't hate the way it's looking, so, you know, and it's my creation, so I get to pick. I think I'll do some of these little ones here, and let's open this pink up. I always enjoy when they plan the in colors so that you have a nice like set of inks. Like if you only bought the in colors, you could really do a lot of stamping things with just the in colors. So I'm going to stamp this here, and then let's do one down here. Like that, and I'm liking that. Now what do I want for the center of that one? There are 2 here. This is a larger of the other 2 flowers left, so I'm going to take the larger center. Oh, this seems really big for this flower. I think this is way too big. I'm going to stamp this in there, and this in here. There, just so you can see it. It's nice to have something in the center. I might add some, either with my black Stampin' Right marker or with my white gel pen. I'll add some dots to the centers of those later. And then there is this smaller one. Maybe I could actually do a yellow flower here. Put a yellow one here, and maybe a yellow one up here. There we go. And then the center, I think I will make the center of this flower, not that. Right? Yeah, not that. It's too big. This should actually, maybe this should also go in the center of these. Maybe. I'll try that on the next one. Let's see, where did the little one go? Here we go. We'll do this one. And I'm going to make it pink. Because it'll just be a little bit darker. There we go. That's nice. And now I want to add a little bit of the leaves in there, and I am going to cover this up because I have the masks, so I'm going to use the masks. It'll be easier than just trying to partially ink something up. So I think I'm going to try these leaves, although I probably will just partially ink these up anyway. So let me bring these down. Let's try this. Let's do a little green here. A little green down here. And maybe some green here. And a little bit of green here, but this time I think I'll go a little farther off. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to pull this off. I feel like I've got some nice space in the middle for a sentiment. And I feel like I'm going to leave that now. I like that. It's, you know, something different. So let me turn this over. Okay, friends, I'm going to just speed this up a little bit and do a little voiceover through this part of it because there are 9 more panels that I did. And you can see here I'm trying this 2-step floral that has the stem going throughout it, and then it's got all the little tiny flowers. And I started with the stem thinking it would be easier to line up this way. When I stamp the next one, I'll try it the opposite way just to see which way it's easier. Isn't it pretty? I really like the way this looks. So I'm going to stamp this a couple more times just for fun and pull out the stem part of it. And I'm using the boho blue and the mossy meadow, and I actually thought it was easier to put the stems down first, but you know, I'm feeling kind of like I'm not quite getting the whole stem part lined up, but it doesn't really matter. Like, it definitely doesn't have to be perfect. Any spots I don't like, I'll just use my Mossy Meadow Stampin' Up marker and fix those, and I'm going to just extend the stems of this a little bit and make them look like they came from, you know, somewhere below that card panel. And I can always cut this off if I want to later to get rid of some of the white space, although I do like the white space. I'm going to add a little bit of this green here. And one thing I wish this set had was a smaller leaf that I could put places. So I pulled out that splatter looking stamp. I feel like it kind of looks like flowers at the end of a stem. So I'm kind of stamping it all over the place and stamping off a couple times, and I'm not loving this piece. Once I did that, I didn't really love it. That was in the wild wheat color, but I put it aside, and in my head I'm thinking I can use that in my art journal somehow, but I end up using it for one of the cards that I made in the end, because when it dried and when I walked away and gave it some time, I actually really liked it. And that is my second piece of advice. My first best crafting advice is to experiment, experiment, experiment. My second best piece of advice is if you're doing something like this, you're doing some kind of experiment, or you're trying a new technique or new colors or something like that, and you're doing a project, like I'm doing this project and I'm not sure how I'm feeling about it. And I'm just kind of trying to do things there. Like you saw me stamp off a couple times, and I used my Stampin' Up marker to add the stems. And I'm going to try this one again. I'm using the wild wheat color. But my point was, walk away from it. Leave the project out on your desk. Give it an hour at least. When you come back, you'll either like it much better or you'll hate it, and you can try to fix it up, or just, give it a toss or use it for something in your art journal. Add some more layers on top of it for, add some splatter layers, and, try some techniques on top of it and use it in your art journal. And if you don't have an art journal, you should start one. It's pretty fabulous to do that. So, I liked that little piece better. I felt like I arranged things better, and I did like the addition of the green leaves. So again, I put it aside. I'll look at it later. I don't make any decisions while I'm working on something. I always give it time to, percolate in my brain. And sometimes I come back with ways I want to change it. So I have 2 of these panels, whatever size this is. I don't think they're quite 3 inches wide. They're somewhere between 2 and 3 inches. And I'm pulling out the medium flower and putting in like a little bunch of those here. And I'm kind of just making a whole bunch of them and just building it up a little bit. And I'm overlapping them. Notice I'm done with the mask now. Now I'm just stamping away because I'm not sure if this experiment is working. So I'm just trying to create some panels that I will use somehow. I'm not feeling confident that they're going on cards at this point in the process. I use the wild wheat for the centers, and I kind of like that one. I actually like having some white space on these panels, I have to say. White space makes a huge difference for me. So I'm trying this other one again because I felt like the start of what I had on that other piece was pretty good. So I wanted to kind of try this again, and maybe not so much of the splatter, because to me those really look like florals when you hold them vertically. Like those could be, like if I did those in purple, they could look like lilacs. And I like the way that looks. I like that color combination. And once I add the green, I really like for some reason the green this mossy meadow seems to really finish it off. And it's just the right tone of green to work with this boho blue and the moody mauve. It's a moody green, if you ask me. So I really like it. And I like this panel. There's room for a nice sentiment at the top. I could cut that down if I wanted to. These things are going through my head as I'm making them. So I'm going to try something similar with this panel. This time I'm going to I'm stamping the leaves first, and then I'm going to add the flower on top. Again, I've dispensed of the mask, and these are fitting just fine, and overlapping them doesn't seem to make it look worse. I actually like the way this is looking. Like this is actually a pretty fun panel. And this time I tried to do the 2 centers. I tried the larger of the 2 centers there, and I'm just not sure about like the center bits. So I'm playing around. This time I had 2 of these sizes, and I decided to do the same layout, but this time I pulled the yellow out instead of the green, because sometimes when leaves start to die a little bit, they change color, and I thought, let me see what this looks like. And I paired it with the blue this time. I do really like a nice yellow green, and when this dries, it looks so different from what it looks like now. I just think it's so pretty. I think this blue is spectacular. That it is a really pretty blue. And combined with the mauve and the mossy meadow and that wild wheat, I think it's such a pretty combination. And it also, the in colors also have the copper clay, which is a nice reddish brown. I will use that on some of my sentiments in the next part of this video, and I really like that added to the whole thing because it adds a pop of that reddish brown in there, and it's so nice. So I stamped this. I'm using the same floral stamp for all of the flowers I'm stamping here. And this is, I think this is the last piece I actually stamp. And you can see, even like, I realize I sped this up, but this really went pretty quickly. I stopped thinking about it. I stopped overthinking it. But here I decided that I need to do some stuff. So I'm doing the centers of all the flowers, and this time I'm using the Mossy Meadow. And I like that quite a lot. I bet the copper clay would have looked nice in the center too. I didn't think about that because at this point I hadn't pulled that color out. But now I'm going to take that splatter stamp and I start adding some underneath to fill in the spaces, and I'm just inking up the very tip of this, and I start like spreading it around above the flowers, and I'm loving it. It looks so pretty. It just looks like wisps of, green baby's breath, and I like it. So I'm filling in some of the white spaces below the flowers and between the flowers, and that ends up being my favorite piece in the whole panel. So here's the point where I've got everything all cleaned out. So now I'm spreading these out, and I realize I like some of these, and there are a couple I don't love. Like, I don't love those two little ones. I don't love that one at all. But I'm okay with most of the rest of them. Like, I feel like I can make cards out of these. But this is the point where I decide it's time for dinner, and I walk away for an hour. So I'll come back in a couple of minutes. So here is my best tip ever, friends. So when I was making these yesterday, I really didn't love too many of them. I was okay with these. I love this one. I think this one's really pretty. Like, that's to me the prettiest one there. And I liked this one a lot, and I thought this one was okay. And this one was okay. However, didn't love these. These are okay, but I have to say, I let them sit, and I came back an hour later and I thought, it gave the ink a chance to dry, and I think that the ink lightened up a lot. So I love the colors. Once they dried, I was a little hesitant about the colors as I was using them because they seem so dark, but look at them. Once they dry, they look completely different, especially given the pads are new, so they're pretty juicy. And now I look at these and there isn't one here that I don't like, so now I just have to put them together. And when my husband came in, he said the one that I thought was a real stinker was this one, and he said, "Oh, this one's my favorite." I'm like, "Really?" Okay then, that's funny. But now I'm going to put them on cards and add some sentiments, and I'm thinking I want to use the copper clay color. So I've got all three of the sentiments. This is Birthday Blooms for You, which I'll probably use on quite a few of these. Like, I think this one is pretty perfect for quite a few of these. Then this one's my favorite. Every thought of you makes me smile. What a beautiful sentiment. I want to put that on some of these bigger ones. Actually, I could do that diagonally there too. And then this one is With a Grateful Heart. So I think this will work on a couple of these. And so I think that's what I'm going to do. I just wanted to share where I am so far. So I did this card, which was my least favorite panel, and I decided to stamp the sentiment in black. You can see I put a black panel around it. I pulled all the black bits out of the scrap envelope that I had and decided to use some of those. I really like the touch that that black panel adds, and I'm just cutting that black mat 1/8 inch wider and 1/8 inch longer than the panel that I happen to have in my scrap bin. I did cut the panel down to 5 1/4, and then I made this 5 1/8. So whatever width this was, I just added 1/8 for the width. And I really like that card. I'm surprised to say I genuinely like the card. Then I did this one, and this was the first one I did. I really liked the black. I stamped the sentiment in the copper clay color, and I really like that as well. Like, I'm not sure that I have a preference there, but I kind of like the additional color on this one. The little bit of reddish brown, I think adds something nice to that card. Then I did one that my husband said he didn't like at all, and I really like that. I stamped with a grateful heart, and I made a couple of additions. I took that little splatter stamp out because it looks a little bit like a floral stamp to me as well, just the shape of it. So I added some, I just inked up the tips of it and did a little bit in Mossy Meadow, and then I took my Stampin' Right marker, the fine tip, and added very lightly, added some stems in there, and I feel like that really completed the picture. And I don't know if you can also tell, I pulled out my gel pen and added some dots to that as well, and I felt like that just completed everything. So I really, really like how that looks. I love the splatter in there, and it makes me wonder, should I be adding a touch of that to all the cards? But I like the way this is. I am going to leave well enough alone, I think, but I love the look of this. So I'm going to keep doing this. And again, all I'm doing is I'm measuring the card. This is 2.5. This was a 2.5 inch scrap, which I cut down to 5.5. I cut a little tiny bit. I cut approximately that much off, about 1/2 inch off when I pulled it out of my scrap bin. Now I'm going to cut this down to 5 3/8. So I'm just cutting 1/8 inch off it. That is garbage. And then I'm going to pull out the closest piece of black cardstock I have in size. I think I have a few that look like they could be complete card bases, but I'm going to use those for this project. So I said it was 2.5, I believe. 2.5. So I'm going to make this 2.5. So I'm going to make this 2 5/8. And then hopefully this is long enough. I should have measured that first. So 5.5 will be the card. I cut it down to 5 1/4. I think I cut it down to 5 1/4. I will check that. So I need this to be 5 3/8. There we go. I need to make sure this is 5 3/8. Or 5 1/4. So I think I cut it down to 5 3/8. So I need it to be 5 1/4. There we go. I just had to cut a little bit more off that. Let's check. I just like the little peak of black around it, and I'm good with that. So all I'm doing after this point is gluing these on and adding a sentiment. And it's actually kind of a challenge sometimes to decide where to put when you're using just a little decorative strip like this. Like, you could do this instead of making stamping panels like I have. You could use strips of pattern paper here. That would make it super simple, but then the trick for me is always which side to put this on, and my tendency is to go on the left, so I'm trying to put a few of them on the right. It's not my favorite card layout, and I'm thinking that that won't fit down there, but it would fit up here. I haven't done one like that yet, but I really do love this sentiment down the side on these longer panels. So I think I might do that again, and I think I might do the copper again. see if I like it with this combo. See if I can hold my cards straight. And then just line this up a bit with the grid. It looks a little crooked. The moment I touched it down, I thought, oh, that looks a little crooked. Nope, not so crooked that I can't live with it. So I do really like that. I think that is a really pretty color combo. This is all I have left of the scraps, so these will make good sentiment bits. I definitely won't get rid of these because they're like already pre-cut for sentiment. So I'm excited that I did whittle down my scrap pile a little bit, and I want to show you the cards. And remember, this is the Textured Floral stamp set, and I used every stamp in this set to use up those scraps. So let me share some. There's this one. I love it. I love the way it came out. My husband does not like the sideways sentiment. So he doesn't like the 3 cards with the sideways sentiment, although he loves the images. So I have that one. Here's this one. And some of them I used the copper clay ink to do the sentiment, and on some I did the memento for a black sentiment. Then here's this one and this one. The only difference really between these two will be the color of the sentiments. Then there's this one. I did add some on some of these. This one, this one, this one, this one. I added some white gel pen dots. Same here. And for this one I'd cut off these little 1/8 inch strips, and I thought I would just use them to decorate the bottom to give it kind of a different look. And again, some white gel pen details to the centers. I just really like the way these cards came out. I can't believe it. The stamps really did all the work. The stamps and ink really did all the work. And I loved it so much more after I let them dry. So this one I think is still my favorite. I really love how the stamped portion came out. And I added some more things to this one, which I shared a little while ago in the video, and I love that card. And I love this one. It's very simple. You know, if I had just stamped directly onto the card itself and just had this in the center of the card with this underneath it, I would have liked this very much as well. So I'm so happy with how all of these cards came out. And how many did I end up with here? So this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cards. I ended up with 11 cards, all pretty different. I mean, I have a couple cards, these two are the same, or, you know, almost the same, and these two are very similar, but I'm really quite pleased with these, and I feel, you know, happy with my end results. So there you go. And I'll probably stamp a little flower inside each one, and a little flower or some of this splatter stamp on the envelopes, and I'll have a nice set of cards here that I think the sentiments are beautiful. I think people would really enjoy getting those, and I definitely will be playing with this stamp set many more times because I absolutely love the result. I mean, I was just like stamping away, not putting a lot of thought into what I was doing. I just picked a color palette and stuck with it, and used up a lot of scraps in the process. I'm super happy about that, because if you save your scraps and you forget to reach for them, then you just have a big pile of scraps that just doesn't add to the feng shui of your craft room at all. So there you go, friends. I hope you enjoy this. I would love it if you give this video a thumbs up. Let me know if you have a favorite card here, or if maybe you didn't like them at all. I don't know. And I would love it if you're not subscribed, if you subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get notifications every time I upload a new video. And if you are subscribed already, thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you are here. And if you are looking for Stampin' Up! Supplies and you're definitely interested in this textured floral and those in colors, those are the 2023 through 2025 in colors, that's what they are. And you can get the textured floral and those ink pads on my Stampin' Up! Store, or in my Stampin' Up! Store at stampwithkim.net. So thank you so much for watching, friends. I hope you have a creative day. Have a wonderful day. Bye.